All right, so it's 101. We're going to get started. So, first off, welcome to all of the New Jersey first responders that have taken the time out of your schedules to join us today for our webinar. We are with the RISE team, and we welcome you to our bi monthly webinar series provided specifically for New Jersey first responders. Our goal is to support, offer webinars, phone support, and groups to ensure that our New Jersey first responders have supports during these challenging times. Today's webinar is entitled Reactions to Managing Crises, Mental Agility, and a Mobile Thought Process. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ravi, and I'll be your Zoom host for today. So if there's any technical issues that you might have, or if you need any other type of support, please feel free to message me in the Zoom chat. I'll be behind the scenes, but I definitely want to be able to support each of you to make sure that you have your full attention and there's no technical issues during our webinar. That being said, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today, and we're going to we have a few speakers throughout. I'd like to introduce Kelly Montesano. She is a first responder. She's a firefighter, an EMT, and she's a member of our RISE team. So Kelly, take it away.
Thank you, Ravi, and welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We are excited to have you all with us and to show you the program we put together for our first responders. Please feel free to chat in our chat box or to say hi and where you are from or any questions or comments you may have along the way. So New Jersey Rise First Responder COVID Line is part of Rutgers National Call Center. We are part of New Jersey Hope and Healing, which is a FEMA-funded project that addresses the emotional and behavioral health needs of New Jersey residents concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic. RISE program is specific for our state's dedicated first responders. Next slide. Our RISE program offers 4 primary support services: peer-staffed crisis helplines, webinars, which you are part of today, virtual support groups to allow you to come together and talk to one another, and a database of resources and outreach programs to connect to you while you're serving everyone else. Next slide. Here's our team and faces behind the phone lines, the ones sitting with you during the support groups and here with you during our webinar. We are staffed with first responders just like you, retired and active during the pandemic. We have over 100 years of combined experience working in law enforcement, fire, EMS, and armed forces. Now I want to take the time to ask the RISE staff to introduce themselves in the chat box. Let us know you're here and who you are. Next slide. Our webinar series follows UPenn Resiliency Model. Here are the 6 skills we will discuss throughout our webinar series to help you build your resilience and help prevent anxiety and depression. So again, back to our toolbox that we keep adding to. So far, we've learned in the last couple webinars to be aware of what we're thinking in those fight or flight moments, which is self-awareness. Last webinar, we discussed self-regulation. So I want to take this time and a moment to utilize our self-awareness, and let's think about one way we practiced self-regulation in the last week. Let us know in the chat. And if this is your first time joining us, what does self-regulation mean to you? I invite all of you to share in the chat box. So that's right, self-regulation is our ability to regulate impulses, thinking, emotions, and behaviors to achieve our goals or to make split-second decisions that as first responders we do on a daily basis. 2 weeks ago, we learned techniques on how breathing can help us regulate those thoughts and those revved up feeling moments to help us refocus and build regulation and control to reach our goals. And today we will discuss mental agility. But again, before we get started, what do you think of when you think of mental agility? I invite you to share in the chat box. That's great, how strong you are. Adjust on the spot, I like it. Flexible, exactly. So, we have all these tools, but what are we going to do when things don't go as planned? As first responders, I know that's, definitely sometimes we go to a scene, it's not always what we think it's going to be. So it's our ability to think flexibly, accurately, and thoroughly, our ability to look at things from multiple perspectives, identify and understand problems, and our willingness to try new things. In our next webinars to follow, we will discuss connection, strength of character, and optimism. We want to give you these tools to help you navigate and thrive during these challenging times. Now here's a video now here's firefighter Oscar Morales to introduce to you a video about first responders working in the front lines.
First responders commonly endure risky situations where they must exhibit mental agility by thinking on their feet, while applying their trained knowledge to a situation. Let's take a look at some members of the Menchaca Fire Rescue, Pflugerville Fire Department, and Austin Travis County Emergency Medical Services describe their experiences as they navigate working through the pandemic.
Whenever I leave my house, I make a switch. I'm here to work. I'm here to handle business. I'm here to help people. I go back home. I switch it back to my family. My son, he doesn't know what it is, so I just couldn't bear seeing him get sick and go through all that. So I really try to be careful.
Years in September, I've been doing this type of work. We've never seen anything like this. And we've seen the flu where people get the flu and we take precautions there. But as far as a rapid spread of a disease, I've never seen anything like this. I think this is going down in history for all emergency services across the United States and the world. The new norm is not yet known. We're doing everything possible to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and our crew and to keeping away from exposures.
We've never dealt with anything that is this protracted, that has taken this long to deal with. And the other thing that's very odd about it is nobody can tell us when it's going to end. It's affecting us on every single call we go on because we are not discounting that it's not there.
I saw my family probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I told them this would be the last time I would see them until after this blew over.
It's more difficult because I have to think forward a little bit more since I am pregnant, but I also don't want to take it home to my daughter, who's 2.5. My mother-in-law is immunocompromised, and my husband's also a paramedic for a different system.
When you're done with it, just let me know. I'll turn it off for you, okay?
I know my daughter, I'm going to tell her that she was on the truck with me until 37.5 weeks. And I can tell my son as well that he was out there with me.
Ambulance, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm 88 years old.
And for the safety of our medics, is anyone there being monitored for COVID-19 or been in contact with someone who has COVID-19?
No.
Does anyone there have any flu-like symptoms?
No.
We're living in this kind of unknown. You're always at risk. We try not to let it affect our patient care, but it's always in the back of our head.
Now I'd like to take this time to introduce to you Dr. Julie Trupiano, doctorally prepared, triple board certified psychiatric nurse practitioner, also the FMBA CISM clinical coordinator, EBA 105 peer clinician, and New Jersey State Troopers Fraternal Association peer clinician. As we go through the next few slides, please feel free to ask her any questions and comment anything you would like and put in the chat box. Julie?
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today? If you have any questions, just jump in the chat box and I'll try to address them as I'm going through my slides. Okay. All right. So what is mental agility, right? You see the definition right there. It's basically saying that individuals who go out feel comfortable in a situation that they are exposed to, and based on the information they have, they make a decision and they communicate it to their peers and then to civilians on the call so that you can understand. Not everybody has mental agility. So in 2020, this global pandemic virus has left first responders very unsettled, feeling stuck, scared, even like emotionally paralyzed in their own thoughts because of the stresses that have developed this last year. And it's been magnified by the virus and the unknowns, and it just stokes the fire of fear that we have in each other. So in a chaotic and busy, difficult world, sometimes it's hard to cultivate a sense of calm when you're going out on these calls and we just don't know, and especially with COVID happening. So, it's really important to have your mind calm when you're going out and dealing with things. And that's part of where mental agility gets addressed. Like I said before, not everyone has it, but it's something that you can develop and enhance as time goes along. Next slide. Okay. So when you think about first responders and decision making, first responders are challenged to make decisions on less than perfect information about situations that are constantly changing. So, you hear from dispatch, there's a call, it's a fire, and it's, people trapped. Well, you get there and it's not people trapped, it's like 10 people trapped. And then there's 4 dogs that are trapped. And there's all kinds of other things in the scenario that you weren't told with dispatch until you get there. So whether it's police or fire or EMS first on the scene, you need to make an immediate assessment about what's actually happening and then communicate it to all the people that are right there, as well as people that are coming to the scene to try to help you. And that can be really stressful sometimes because not everyone's assessment of the situation is like the next person that gets to the scene. Someone might roll up and say, oh, it's a small incident, a small car accident, no big deal. And then you can have another person that rolls up and says, oh my God, we've got 5 people in this accident and a baby's crying and screaming, how are we going to handle this? So not everyone assesses the situation in the same way. So, part of it too is you're taking ambiguous information that people are giving you and you're trying to make clear thought processes out of it and make those connections to help everyone. And it's really important as you get there and you're running through all these different scenarios of things you're seeing to be calm in your thoughts, even though your thoughts are racing, and be as calm as possible in a very volatile situation. So we're going to talk about the next couple slides. We're going to talk about 5 key components that you need regarding mental agility. Next slide. Okay. Drawing from previous experience. So when you think about having self-awareness of your prior successes and your failures, and people think like, oh, I only want to be successful. I don't want to think about that. Sometimes the most successful people are the ones that fail the most and learn from those failures and how to be better at each next situation that they have. It's easy to focus on our failures and we want to learn from them, but not make it so much that it takes away from really what we're trying to accomplish. It's important to have self-awareness to learn from your mistakes as well as your successes and take constructive criticism from your peers as well as other branches of services. So you get on the scene and EMS arrives and now fire arrives and fire might be criticizing EMS or the police might be criticizing the fire department. And it makes it hard. We all want to work together, right? We all say we're going to work together. But sometimes when we get there, that's not really what happens. And then people get upset because the fire department has one, motivation to do something. Police department has another motivation to do something. You come to a fire, there's a fire and you get there. Like I think about, there was a fire in a town not that long ago, about 5 years ago, where the gentleman actually, he killed his family and then he set the house on fire. And when the fire department, actually the police department got there first on scene, they were trying to, put out part of the fire with these small extinguishers that they had while they were waiting for the fire department to show up. Fire department shows up, they're of course blasting it with water, trying to, put the fire out. But they didn't realize at the time they actually had a crime scene. So fire and EMS are running through trying to figure all this out. They're trying to rescue these kids. I mean, sadly, they were already deceased. We didn't know that until later. But you've got, again, these different branches of services, your police, your fire, your EMS, all there with the same goal, but then they have their different things that they need to accomplish. So it was a crime scene, fire's running all over the place. Police are also getting upset because you're running through a crime scene, right? So again, it's important to draw from previous experience and say, what happened on that call and what could we learn differently for the next one? And think about how each branch sort of works together. Our failures can help build the strength. Yes, exactly, Mike. That's very true. Okay, next slide. All right, lifelong learner. So just because you go to the academy doesn't mean your training and your learning stops. People that are successful and have mental agility will continue to learn, and they will continue to expose themselves to other scenarios and different things. It's important for you to know what your standards in your industry are and what the changes are and what's going on, not only in maybe your county.
I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened, but perfect example of having mental agility, going with the flow and figuring it out. Okay, so we're on slide 2, right? Lifelong learner, right, Kel?
Yeah, slide 2, lifelong learner. Wait,
Okay.
blank.
So, as I was saying, can everyone still hear me? Hopefully.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. It's because you finished the academy, you want to continue doing other things to learn in your industry. And I think I said, what we do here in Monmouth County might be something totally different that you do in Essex County, and how you respond to things based on, population and, people's backgrounds. Maybe you have more Spanish-speaking people in one area than you do in another. So you have to be very fluid when you're going into different scenarios and not knowing everything. Okay, number 3, next slide.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so it's important to learn from every opportunity, especially our failures, right? And it's important to think about, just because we've always done something one way doesn't mean we need to always continue doing it that way. And what I find is it's very easy to fall into that trap and say, we've always done it this way. This person has always handled it this way. This captain has always wanted it that way. And, we kind of get stuck with that. And when we're stuck in that pattern, it has us doing things all the time that doesn't really allow us to grow and to learn about every situation that we're exposed to. Give yourself and others permission when things don't work, and figure out how to expand on that. So what works in Trenton might not work in a place like Deal or Allenhurst. Those are very small places. Okay. All right. So you're going to think outside the box and be a problem solver. The worst thing that we have is when it's someone that always wants to only do it one way and never think about other alternatives that we have when we think about solving a problem. So look at other disciplines. One of the things that I typically find in police and fire and EMS is you guys go on a call and then you're dispatched to the next call, and you don't get really any time to debrief and talk about what's happened. And then you think, okay, well, why is it that we have more burnout and more PTSD in those 3 disciplines, police, fire, EMS? Because you guys never really have the opportunity to sit down and talk about things. With the FMBA, we are changing that. We come out with the FISM team and we talk about things. But when we think about an emergency room, when I worked in the emergency room, we would have situations, we'd have a kid come in, maybe unfortunately he would die from asthma, or there was hit by a car, or some scenario, and we get upset with these things. Well, instead of moving on to the next, patient, at some point during the shift, we make it a point to have a debriefing right there on the spot and talk about what's happened. That way we sort of dump what's happened and what we've experienced, so that we're not kind of carrying it on throughout the shift. And I would say that's one thing to think about for your department, if you could find a way to do that when it's actually happening, because you kind of compartmentalize it, you go on, and then you go home and you're left with 10 different calls that you went on, plus a really bad one. And then what happens? You're sitting there by yourself and you don't even know what to think, because you can't really bounce it off of each other. So think about how to solve other problems in the way other disciplines do. So again, it would be great if you could, as a police, fire, or EMS, debrief right then and there. And if you can't, find other people that you can talk to later in the shift or right after work. Okay, next slide.
You're good.
Okay. All right. Surround yourself by a diverse network. So, I think about that picture right there, the power of stepping away. You are the company you keep. And that is so very true, right? Think about all the people that you associate with. Are they positive? Are they negative Nelly? Are they gossipers? Well, you become what you're exposing yourself to. So it's really important when you're developing mental agility to really expand your network and not always be with the same people. So my husband's retired law enforcement, and it's funny because when he would step away from that, he had almost no one that he hung out with that was anything to do with police, fire, EMS, nothing. He just wanted civilian friends because he felt that allowed him to kind of get away from what was going on and have a fresh perspective and not be focused on, cop things 24/7. Because then a lot of times when you get together, you end up like talking shop, and instead of decompressing and enjoying your time at the beach or, like out to dinner, you end up talking about all these things that go on, and you never really allow yourself to step away from it and have a different life outside of your professional life. Okay, next slide. All right, how do you maintain mental agility in New Jersey? Well, think about the publications that are available to you guys. The New Jersey Cop magazine, the FMDA bulletin that comes out. Those are two. Blue magazine, that's another one that comes out. There's an FOP journal that I've seen that comes out. So I was reading the 2001 January magazine from New Jersey Cops, and I was reading some of the remarks by their president and their vice president, and it was talking about a lot of different topics that are affecting not just police. It really could apply to fire and EMS. But it's important to think about staying informed of what's specifically going on in New Jersey, and are you referencing appropriate sources? So something like the NJ Cop magazine, the FMDA bulletin are good sources, not just stuff that you find on Facebook, right? Very common and quick that we say, oh, let's go to Facebook and that's where we get our information from. But it's not always accurate. And then when we don't have accurate information, that breeds a lot of fear and unknown, and it just keeps reinforcing not having any mental agility in this situation. So knowledge is power. And when you think about what you know and the current topics and how it's directly affecting you, it helps you handle a crisis better. So two examples are, next slide, the COVID situation with the vaccine. So 1A are your doctors, your nurses, and then 1B is what? Police and fire. Like, you guys are kind of secondary to everything, even though we all should truly be in that 1A group. So, you're sort of faced with, do you vaccinate? Do you not vaccinate? What's good for your own family's mental health and what's good in your head and your heart? That's what you should do when you're thinking about the vaccination. Right now, there's been a little bit of a shortage. Some towns aren't getting the vaccine. Police, fire, EMS they're kind of put to the side. I'm hearing some people have gotten it, some people are not able to get it right now because there's the shortage. One of the things that was talked about in that magazine, the New Jersey Cop magazine, Doug Forrester from Integrity Health was trying to access some vaccines to his Somerset office and give them and make them available to people. So that's another way that you develop your mental agility, knowing what's actually going on with current standards and current topics that are affecting you right now in your industry. Next slide. The other thing is thinking about managing your relationships. Think about time for yourself, your family, your work family. When you come to the end of your life, and who's there at your bed? Is it going to be the people that you work with? Is it going to be people on social media? Or is it going to be your family? So it's really important for mental agility to maintain very strong relationships and with people that matter the most. And sometimes that gets really skewed because we're with our work family all the time, and we end up thinking about them more than our own personal family. And when we come home, there's often this sort of disconnect with what goes on. We're not really talking to our spouses. We're not really engaging with our children. So that will weaken someone for mental agility, not having strong relationships. So you've got to make sure that you take time for yourself, your family, and then your work family. And during this pandemic, as hard as it is, it's still really important to make sure we make time to have that face-to-face contact with people. It's hard with the mask and social distancing and being around other people if you're feeling safe or not safe. But if you can do something outside to maintain those relationships, to feel like you're still sort of human, that's really important to do that. And, when you think about what you do with your time, you want it to be something that's fun and relaxing. Next slide. So when we talk about reactions to managing the crisis, knowledge is power, any type of crisis you respond to, and how you handle that. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't go on a call and come back from it and it be not a good one. And then you start the what if, I should have, I would have, I could have. That never does good for anyone. Be mindful of your exposure to like news, the newspaper, what's being reported on social media. Just because it's published or posted somewhere doesn't mean the information is true and accurate. Oftentimes those methods of information, information dissemination is an author's subjective opinion, and it's not actually reality. Everyone that puts stuff out there has an agenda. So just be mindful of the information that you're absorbing and how you respond to it. Do you react? Do you process it? And how do you respond from it? Another thing to sort of think about is be balanced. So you want to think about your self-care when you're developing mental agility. Be physically fit, exercise, balance with proper nutrition, take vitamins, make sure you're sleeping. When you're having good sleep, you make clear decisions. When you're not getting good sleep, you're not thinking straight, you make impulsive decisions, you make decisions on parts of information that you have because our brain isn't making all those connections when we're sleep deprived. Really important to be balanced. Keep the relationships with the people that are in your life strong. Be accountable for your mental health. So if that means that you need to go and talk to someone, do that. Don't wait till there's a problem to go. Just like when you go to the gym, you're doing something to maintain your physical health, do something to maintain your mental health. When you talk to someone, it doesn't have to be a problem. You could just come into the office and talk about things that are going on and dump what's happening and just leave it and then go. Next slide. Okay. Thoughts become things. Pick good ones. The internal dialogue that you tell yourself is what you believe about yourself. So it's important to be positive, to maintain, to manage your mental health agility, and to be able to better manage any kind of crisis because you're telling yourself good thoughts. If you're focusing on the negative, you're saying this call is terrible, we don't have the equipment, I don't have the skills to manage the situation, I have too many patients, I don't know anything. That's all negative, and all it does is breed future negative thinking and brings on negative energy. And this isn't going to keep anyone mentally agile when you're managing a crisis if you're constantly focused on the negative. So no matter what skill set you have, what the experience is, you've got to try to find something positive in it and grow from that experience. And like I said before, be accountable for your mental health. That includes how you have self-reflection about what you've experienced, what emotional deficits you have, what your strengths are, and any outward thinking and how you respond to that. And I guess my last thing that I want to say to you is, you can always start off in like a primary care office to get some help and talk to someone. But it's better if you actually, if you do yourself a favor and you see a specialist outside of primary care, because specialists are exactly that. They're highly trained in their area of expertise. They can narrow the focus down of your issues, and they can provide very targeted treatment for you and not just generalities of what's going on. And that's basically how we get to mental agility. Anyone have questions?
Doctor, I think a good point you had was for first
Wait,
responders.
she can't hear you. Hold on one second.
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to log back
Go
on
ahead.
Zoom. I know.
You can talk.
Hi, doctor. This is Joe. I just had a comment. One of your points was to have a diverse set of friends and different network. Like your husband said, he wants to get away from police. I think that's good because as a former policeman, I find that they are the ultimate pessimists, and they kind of everybody
Are you in?
starts. I think you lost her.
Oh, she hung up. I think she's in the chat
I'm
though.
here. I'm
Oh,
here.
here she is.
Okay, cool.
Did you hear anything I said, doctor? Or?
I heard nothing.
Oh, okay. What I was saying is, I understand what you're saying, especially with your husband. You said he wants to get away from other cops when he retired, and I agree with that because I'm a retired cop too, and I found that the cops were ultimate pessimists. They look,
Yes.
the glass is always half full, or half empty, I should say, and you kind of need to get away from that negative thinking because it absolutely does nothing to help you.
Right. And it really stops that mental agility. Like I said, we don't all have mental agility, just like not everyone has common sense. We don't all have agility. We don't have that marathon thinking and training to get us through. And exactly what you said, you know, you can hang out with some of your cop friends or your firefighter friends, but if you have that secondary source and experience other things, it just grows your mindset. It's really hard sometimes to be around, you know, people of our same subculture here, first responders. We like it, people understand it. We can say a really inappropriate joke or make a reference of something that we say to our civilian friends. But it's really good to break away from that and have different exposure and not always be first responder driven with our friends and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem too is that with the work schedule, like if you're off on Monday and Tuesday and you want to socialize, there's not too many other people that are off on Monday night that want to go out.
Right. I know. Right. I can, you know, it's so funny. We would go out and every once in a while when he'd have a Friday night free, we'd go down to like Point Pleasant when our kids were younger, and he would be losing his mind because there's too many people and the noise and everything else. And he did so much better. He's retired now, but he did so much better when it was like a Monday or a Tuesday going down to the shore doing something because no one was around and no one's bothering him. And it was just, it's funny. Right? We have
well, the point I was trying to make is like when you're socializing, the only other people off on a Monday or Tuesday night is another cop. That's what that's the point I was getting at, you know.
Right, exactly. So it makes it hard to try to expand that, you know, your friend circle if everyone has, you know, that schedule. Yeah.
Exactly.
But at the flip side, grocery stores are the scariest place on Saturdays and Sundays. So I am thankful for my schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else have any questions?
Give like another minute to see if anyone else.
Is there anything that you guys would like me to clarify? You know, when I put this PowerPoint together, I was kind of thinking about different steps of it. And, you know, you like to go off the PowerPoint, but then sometimes you start talking and go off on other things. So I hope I was able to cover it and help you guys make sense of the mental agility.
Definitely.
Another point too was constant learning in your industry.
Yes.
I like to use an example, like a construction worker, electrician has to keep up on the, like say, the municipal codes. You have to know what, you know, you can't just learn and then 20 years later think the codes are the same. You know what I mean? Things like that. Like things change, rules change, laws change. For firefighters, I guess the techniques change, equipment changes.
Right, and to your point, you know, that's also part of developing the mental agility is to always know what's going on and keep yourself fresh. Then you get stagnant, you get stuck if you're not knowing what the standards are, what new things are out there. So
exactly.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys a question? So is anyone, and I don't know if you want to respond to everyone or just to me, is anyone actually doing any kind of therapy right now? And do you find it helpful? Like if you're actually working in your field and you're not retired, are you doing any kind of therapy to kind of help you get rid of some of the stuff that you're experiencing? Maybe we're just afraid to admit that.
I'll comment on that. So I'm not in therapy at this moment, but I was when I was working in a pretty intense environment. And it was so nice to just have a safe space to unload for that 1 hour. I know for me, sometimes it can be hard, especially when you experience such traumatic events at your workplace. You don't want to feel like a burden to your family or to friends and other people like that. Whereas therapy for me was just a safe space to go and unload anything. And I always felt so light and free afterwards. And I purposely did it at the end of my week so I could have a clear head in the beginning of my week. So I'm definitely a huge advocate for therapy.
Yeah, and you know, like to Michelle, to your point, exactly, you know, it's a safe place and you come into therapy and everything you say is confidential to us. You know, sometimes talking to our peers, it's not always confidential. Sometimes it can't be confidential. So it gets really hard. I know, like when you're thinking, so I'll go back to the police thing. So like if you're telling your friend that, you know, you're feeling stressed out and everything else, and the only way you feel calm is if you're using illicit substances, right? Well, if they're an active duty officer, you know, they sort of have they're mandated to report that. So it makes it really hard. Who can you talk to? Who can you trust? And sometimes you're just talking about innocent things, not thinking about it, but then all of a sudden, you know, you've just said something and now that person has to respond. So when you come to somebody who's professional, you can, exactly what you said, unload, talk about everything. You know, it's pretty interesting. I hear from different departments, and I feel like I feel like it's the water cooler gossip sometimes. I know everything about this department and this person and that person. But what I take from that too, especially when I see different guys and girls from a particular department, I learn a lot of the interworkings of that department. So I get to know the motivation of this captain or that lieutenant or this individual. And when you kind of hear it like the same thing from everyone about this individual person or that individual person, it helps me talk to them about how to manage some of that stuff that goes on. So that really can be interesting sometimes, you know, when you're seeing people from the same departments and stuff. Of course, not them knowing that you're all seeing them from the same department, but it gets interesting to hear all the information. I'm reading Oscar's thing. Yes, exercise, running and exercising. So that was, let me see what slide that was. I think that was like my third to last slide when I talked about like take home, being balanced. Gosh, getting, you know, doing the exercise, that's a good, yeah, perfect right there. Getting that exercise, if you look down, I put that little picture there, you know, sleeping, walking, eating healthy. You know, there's nothing worse than just fast food or just eating like Reese's peanut butter cups and Red Bull. I have this one guy that comes in and he's like always drinking these Red Bulls and everything. And he wants to know why his anxiety is off the charts. Well, you're drinking like 7 million milligrams of caffeine. So that's part of why you're not feeling so balanced. But yeah, I mean, exercise, and you know, that's a great thing. You know, I was actually talking with Kelly this morning. She got on, she did some exercise this morning, right? What you did, Kel, and I did some too. We both did can I say it? We both did the Peloton, yeah. Right? So,
yeah, I was just gonna type it.
So, you know, you find what works for you and you do it. So being balanced isn't just about like the physical piece, it's the emotional, the social, the spiritual piece, you know, and really taking something from all four of those aspects and drawing from it to kind of keep yourself, exactly what I said, balanced. Yep, debriefing after the calls and the exercise. You know, I wish departments did more of that. And I also wish that, and I'm going to keep saying guys, even though I know it's like women, no offense, Cal. You know, like, it's almost like you're not allowed to kind of talk about things that are experienced at work. It's like, you know, you're weak or you're complaining or whatever. So, you know, it would be nice if you guys were able to talk about things a little bit and just get rid of some of it so that you didn't carry it. When we come out for the FMBA to do the CISM debriefing, you know, when we come out to some of the initial departments, you know, they're really quiet at first, but by the end of the debriefing, they're talking about a million things. And sometimes it's not even about the call that we went out on. It's other calls that kind of sparked it for them going on this call. And, you know, just letting them talk about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, and making it a healthy and productive debriefing rather than like a complaining and like bitch session and things like that. But it definitely helps when people are talking more. We go out to Patterson quite a bit. They call us a lot. And what I have found is us going out there as much as we have, you know, the guys know how we do our debriefings and our diffusing, so they jump right into it. And like, we have these like 2-hour sessions sometimes, and you know, you don't think it's going to go that long, but they just start talking and saying all kinds of stuff. And I think they feel so much better after the debriefing. I get a lot of text messages like, thank you for coming. I feel so much better that I've talked about this. So it would be great if you guys could do that more often. Not always just.
You know, the one debriefing we did in down South Jersey, I don't think you were at that one, but it was the EMS, police, and the fire department. And each of them like were able to tell each other things that they didn't know, which helped them tremendously get through the difficult call. Like the ambulance was told the police officers who felt so helpless, like they didn't do anything. Like, no, you guys, without you, we could not have got these children to the hospital, because you guys were there to drive our ambulances. And just like simple little tips like that, where you're able to connect to each other and see like what his side or her side was of what happened, really just helps each other cope with it. And, you're all in the same moment, but, we're all looking at it from different perspective with different hearts. So I think that was one of the most beneficial debriefings I was ever able to go to, because it was like this all entities connecting on this one level. And I know it was just like an moment. I've never seen or been part of something like that. And I don't know if you have been, with the other CISM teams, but that being able to talk to each other among, all the different entities that we do, it was great.
Yeah, so I can't speak to COPS CISM team, but I know for the FMBA CISM team, we'll go after the firefighters, but myself and Troy, we do open it up to EMS, any hospital workers, dispatchers, other cops, and I find that sometimes that is the most productive debriefing, rather than just focused on the firefighters, because exactly what you said, Cal, like other people come in with different perspectives and you talk about things. And, one of the firefighters might be saying like, I think I did a terrible job. I missed this. And the EMS or the paramedic on the call said, oh my God, you did a great job. And you brought that person to me right away. And I was able to intubate them and get them to the hospital quicker because you did this action or whatever action you did. So it really can be beneficial and therapeutic to hear other people's thoughts on it.
I also wanted to share, so I was an EMT 20 years ago and I was never in therapy. I wish I was, because what I found, years ago was that when I would share with colleagues, it would, I'd get support, but it would turn into almost like a matching of like a war story. Oh, so-and-so also went through this. And there was some benefit of feeling connected, but I almost feel like I wasn't really unpacking a lot of the stuff that you see. And I was only a volunteer, so I would only do maybe 1 or 2 shifts a week. It wasn't my full-time job, but there's a lot of benefit to seeking a specialist, a professional, specifically with debriefing, that you can really unpack what's happening to you versus having the support of your squad or other first responders, which I think, again, it's great. We should do that. But again, 20 years ago, I wish I was able to unpack a lot of the emotion of seeing a lot of things you see as a first responder. And again, there's a huge, stigma was big 20 years ago. It's still there. So therapy doesn't mean that you can't handle it or that you're sensitive about it. But I think to kind of push home the specialist debrief, those that debrief, really, it's very different than sharing with a colleague. And I just want to echo that. I think it's really, really important that we share that.
I think it's important too, to also, there's different ways you can debrief. Like the idea of debriefing is great when it's a group and it's peers, even going to therapy, but there are so many other things that you can do on your own as well to cultivate that mental agility, right? And that's why I love how you bring in, your physical wellness, the social wellness, the emotional wellness. You can have your own debrief, whether that's, doing a brain dump and writing it all out just to get it out of your head. Or even, I remember I used to allow my commutes home to be the time to think about everything that happened, and just giving yourself that allotted time and being mindful of when you allow yourself to process that is another form of debriefing and processing. And what you do outside of work is just as important for your mental agility as what you're doing in that moment as well.
Yeah, those are some great points. Absolutely.
So this is really great conversation, and we really appreciate just having this space to be able to just expand a little bit more and talk, because I think the concept of agility and being able to cultivate it, since not everyone has it, is so important. So
Well, I just
know-
want to point out, I was thinking about, Michelle, what you were saying, Robbie, I'm sorry I interrupted, but you were talking about, sometimes you write it out. And I know a lot of people, when I tell, my girls love this, but my guys are like, I'm not writing in a journal. I'm not writing in a diary. I have to tell you that is probably one of the most cathartic exercises, and it's very eye-opening because you could write something down today and then 10 more times, and then in September go back and read what you wrote all along, and you could see like maybe a theme in your thought process, or you're always having these sorts of emotions about something. Maybe you're telling yourself, because in my slides I talked about what you tell, your internal dialogue is what you believe, whether it's true or not. And if you're always like, I sucked on that call, I made this mistake, I didn't know what I was doing. And if you see a pattern when you're journaling of all these things that are always negative and stuff like that, you can kind of reflect back and say, all right, why am I being so negative about this? Or maybe it also helps you sort of put pieces together that this part of the year, you seem to have more negative thinking. Well, why was that? And when you look back on the entire year, well, in the beginning of the year, I was going through a divorce, or my kid was sick and they were in and out of the hospital, different things. So it's really important to get those down and to write things out. And to Oscar's point, exactly, it helps bring a lot of self-awareness when you're writing things down, because sometimes we put it out in paper and we don't realize what comes out until we go back and read it. We're like, oh my God, did I actually think that? And it helps us, with those thoughts.
I always say the magic of pen and paper, right? It just flows. It's a direct line to your brain and what's happening. And it's also, again, it's just another safe space, right? That paper doesn't talk back. That paper doesn't hold judgment. So you could write it all out and you could burn that paper if you wanted to, it's just such an easy way to get those thoughts out of your head. And I love what you said about being able to see the themes and learn from, your past journaling. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Everyone should go run right out after you plowed everything and go get a cute journal with I have one right here that I write my stuff in. But sometimes, especially like seeing everyone all the time, I'm taking in everything that you're telling me. And I could have 10 patients in a day. I could have 15 patients in a day, depending on if I'm just doing therapy or I'm doing meds and therapy. And, sometimes I have to think about, how did I feel that day? What's my own self-reflection about the things that I heard? How can I be a better, provider? How, can I prescribe medications better? Can I do therapy better? What can I do to be a better person on this side of the chair the next time you come into the office? It helps me be very self-aware too. And the other thing too, like when we talked about like the negativeness and stuff, Joe, I think you said, that like you're around other cops and then you just think about all the negativity and stuff. Sometimes I find like people come in, I hear a lot of horrific things, and I hear a lot of beautiful, wonderful things too. But when you hear some of that stuff, you have to think about, how is it making you feel? And I know there are some days after I've heard some terrible, terrible things, I go home and I'm not always in the best place as well. So, I'll go home, I'll get on my Peloton, I'll spin it out, or, I'll even write it out, like how I feel about that moment, to get rid of some of it too, because we're absorbing each other's energy. And, I'm not getting all like crazy spiritual here on that, but we absorb the company that we keep. So it's important to be mindful of that.
Dr. Julie, the journaling thing is something I adopted this year because when I was in the military, we commonly did AARs, which are after action reviews. So every single training event to real life mission was always, an hour sit down, and we critiqued what we did right and wrong, no matter how successful. And when I got out of the military, I realized that was a comfort for me that I was missing. So with the advice of my girlfriend, I picked up a journal, and I've been doing that ever since, and it really helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Julie, for joining us today. It's been great. I know I had fun. It was a great place for everyone, come on and share some of the things that they've been going through. And I know that I was able to take a lot away from this, and I sure just hope that you guys were too. We're going to introduce Michelle with a quick activity just to end this great day and great time that we had together.
I know we talked about so much today, and thank you again, Dr. Julie. We would love to know just one word that is something that you take away from today's webinar. You can write it in the chat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to input it into a word cloud so we can see everyone's response all together at once. So if you could just take the next few minutes to just think of a word, I will enter it into the cloud. These are all great responses. If the word gets bigger in the cloud, that just means it's stated more than once, which I think is kind of cool to see. You can see those recurring themes. All right, these are all great. As you can see, we have agility here, self-awareness, which I love to see. It just means that we're building on those UPenn resiliency model skills, right? Self-awareness was our first one, which allows us to practice self-regulation, which also feeds into our mental agility. So thank you everyone for sending in your responses. We appreciate it. I'm going to turn it back over to Robbie.
Right. So this is by far so engaging with conversation and hearing from everyone. So we just want to thank you for your participation. Thank you to Dr. Julie, to Kelly and Michelle for really kind of cultivating this webinar. Again, these webinars are intended for our New Jersey first responders, and we want to continue to spread the word. We invite you to our next webinar, which is in 2 weeks, and that will be on personal strengths to engage and overcome. We're calling it the Winner Circle. So we invite you to sign up and so that we can continue to have this great series for our New Jersey first responders. I'm also going to put a link into our chat box right now. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you thought about this specific webinar. This survey takes about 1 minute. And it really helps us to guide future programming. So please take a second. We're also going to email that to you. And again, more than anything, we just want to say thank you for all of your service, for continuing, to run towards the crisis and to respond and to take care of our family, our friends, our community, and for really taking care of us during these really, really challenging times. Being a first responder is like no other job out there. So we want to say thank you. Know that RISE is here for you through phone. Our number's on the screen, 833-237-4325. We're on social media. We have a website. So please remember to reach out to us. And we want to thank you for joining us. So take care. I hope everyone is able to dig out of the snow. And we're able to, hopefully next week's storm won't be as bad. It's only supposed to be a little bit for now. So take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.